All right, scarcity mindset. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the scarcity mindset or vetting. All right, and we're going to talk about it as it applies to relationships and dating, but this applies as well to seeking out a job or in sales or promoting your business, being an entrepreneur. The same principles apply. So what happens a lot of times, and we're going to talk actually in the next podcast about relationship models and how they normally fail. We've determined that you got about 5% of relationships that are monogamous out there that last and that are, fulfilling long-term relationships. And it only boils down to maybe 5%. Hard to jam down a statistic, but that's about where it's at. So what is it? If we want to be part of that 5%, we have to take on a different model than what is normally done. Because what's normally done, it isn't working. Now, whether that's 5% or 10% or 15%, whatever percentage that is of happy relationships, we know that it is a smaller percentage than relationships that fail. You know what I'm saying? So if for our relationships to work, we got to take on a different model. So let's look at what normally happens, though, the usual model of dating and relationships. Okay, usually there's not enough dating that goes on. So that's the first thing that happens, and that's a mistake. There's a commitment, even if it isn't verbalized, it happens too early. And that's where, unfortunately, most of these things you're rushed into it. But during this period of dating into that commitment is that honeymoon period, they call it, And so what happens is you have this honeymoon period where everything's spectacular. And the reason why it's so spectacular is because you, as the male, are putting on a mask. You're not showing all your cards usually during this honeymoon period. And there's a little bit to be said about experiencing things too. I mean, that you can say that you don't really know someone until you have to get through a crisis with that person, And I've had that happen all the time, as I'm sure you have, where somebody seems like a great person to talk to and meet with during a network meeting or during, happy hours or during a lunch and learn or something for work or for social. They seem like a great person, but you don't really see them out of that environment. And then you actually work with them closer, and then there's a crisis, and you see how they really are, and you're disappointed with what you thought about them. So that happens all the time. And the reason is, again, people put masks on. And that's what you're doing probably in your relationship during that begin phase, is that you're putting a mask on. And so is she. And furthermore, you're not actually vetting. So because of that scarcity mindset, and a little bit of one-itis, I'll talk about one-itis too, but because of the scarcity mindset, this feeling of, ooh, I found someone to like me. Oh boy, and you're so enamored with this one person early, like within your first 3 to 6 months or whatever, without having done a lot of dating, without having a lot of experiences, you're so enamored with this person that you're afraid to actually vet them out. All right? And there's that. And what's one-itis? One-itis is the myth that there's one person out there. Okay? Here's the thing. Let's pretend, I don't know where that comes from. I mean, it's a little bit Judeo-Christians. A lot of Christians will talk about being with that one person. But I don't think it's as people think it is, all right? I don't think it's a predestined, I think it's a myth, all right? And we'll talk more about that in future episodes of podcasts and videos like these too, because it's a longer topic. But it's the belief that there's just one person out there for you. And I don't know that that's true. That doesn't vet out with evidence. That doesn't vet out with how things go. But what does happen, and I say that, I mean in a predestined format. Like, there's this person lurking out there for you, and they're just for you, and you're just for them, and then you meet, you know what I'm saying, and then magic happens, like in the movies. I don't believe that's how it works. I think that there's people that are put on this earth that you're compatible with, that you can hit it off with right away. And there could be that one person that you really hit it off with that is very much unlike anybody you've ever run into. But what makes that person your pair bond for life is the work you put into that relationship, not because they were magically made for you and predestined for you by somebody, by an outside source, by God or by a higher power. I don't believe that, and that's not even. I mean, I'm not coming at you from a secular perspective with the channel. However, even biblically, that doesn't vet out. Biblically, it says that you bond in marriage forever, but it doesn't say that there's only one person out there forever for you. It doesn't say that anywhere. So I think what happens is you meet this person that you're highly compatible with, and then you build together. And as you build together, you become that one unit, and you can pair bond for life. But that's only 5% of the people out there that actually do that successfully and are truly happy with that. And so, again, we need to figure out how to be the 5% and not do what everybody else is doing if we're going to be successful. So back to it. It's this idea of the one-itis. You meet this one person, and you're so enamored with this one person, and you're so, you have this, someone's trying to come in my room over here. I was like, what are you doing? Anyway, you're so enamored with this one person that you aren't vetting this person out. You're not looking for warning signs, for flaws, for things that are going to be non-negotiable later. So what happens is, male or female, they go through this honeymoons phase where the oxytocin and the dopamine dump is really high, and they're crazy in love with each other and all this stuff, and they feel great. And they're not vetting, and they're not showing their true colors. And then you get into what's called the challenge phase, which is over time. It's about 90 days, okay, give or take. For some it could be longer. It could take 6 months. For some it could be shorter. It depends on how quickly one moves through that phase and into this challenge phase. During the challenge phase, it's where you start seeing the other person's flaws and seeing the other person for who they really are. Now, here's the challenge with that. The challenge with the challenge phase is that if you, as the male, are putting on a heavy mask and you're not sharing who you really are because you're not courageous enough to do so, let's call it out for what it is, then what happens is she's going to recognize you as a different person in that 3, 4, 5 months when the honeymoon phase wears off. You're going to start showing more of yourself and who you really are, and she's going to start seeing that stuff and being more open to seeing that because the newness has worn off. And that's not good, right? Obviously, you can't be a different person for the rest of your life, but it's traumatic in a sense for her. It creates problems. And you hear this all the time where, excuse me, you'll say, you know what, I've been talking all day long. Usually on the phone though for work, not in videos for you guys. But anyway, so you'll hear women say all the time, well, he's not the same guy I first met, or he's changed and all this stuff. Well, the reality is, dude, all right, you were behaving like a different person in the beginning, and you showed who you really were later. You know what I mean? And also, you're probably not leveling up and improving yourself enough. And so there's a number of things going on. And the female does the same thing. You know what I mean? And then sexual attraction starts to wear off because you're a different person. Intimacy starts to wear off. You guys start to break apart. And the next thing you know, it's over with. And that's the cycle. Most relationships won't go past those 2 phases. And then even with that traditional model, because this is the traditional model determined by, it's the going model in psychology right now, which again, I'll present a different model that could make you more successful at the next podcast, but yeah, following that traditional model, that's just generally what happens. During the challenge phase, at some point, as you realize that you're both different than who you actually met, it's irreconcilable after trying different things, and then it breaks up. It never gets to the other 3 phases of the traditional model, which there's a problem with those 3 phases too, and why it breaks up during then also, but that's a topic for another time. So how do we prevent that? How do we prevent this trauma? First of all, you meeting the wrong person, because that can happen. You could be enamored with this person during the honeymoon phase, and then they're not the right person for you. You don't realize that until all of the chemicals that you're high on, your natural chemicals, wear off, and you see them for who they are. Furthermore, what if she is a great person for you, but how do you prevent yourself from fucking it up because she sees you as a different person 3 to 6 months later, right? Or longer, whatever. So the answer is this. First of all, as a dominant alpha male, if that's what you're striving to be, or as just a good male, all right? You have to have the courage to not put on such a heavy mask. I mean, sure, on the first date, you're not going to talk about your childhood, right? I get that. But, you should be open about what your flaws are. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be trying to mask things intentionally. I mean, you always will put your best foot forward and put out the best version of yourself. But you're not going to hide anything either. So you're going to courageously and unapologetically be you, which is really important. And most men don't have the courage to do that, but a alpha leader type of a male is who he is, whether he's doing a video like this or whether he's talking to a client or whether he's talking, the mask is not so heavy. I mean, sure, you display different etiquette in different environments, but you're not actually a different person. It's not that drastic. So it's not so traumatic. I mean, you're kind of who you are 6 months later. You know what I mean? Unapologetically. And that's not only more attractive to most females to be who you are unapologetically, but it's also going to allow you to keep that relationship. You want her to fall in love with you, who you are, and you want to believe that you're good enough for her to do that, not this other person that you present during this honeymoon phase, which most guys do, right? And so don't do that. That's the first thing. You got to work on being yourself and not worrying about the criticism or rejection or any of that. But the next step is you create an open environment for her to be herself. And you should be vetting her, not interviewing her. You should be creating for a good time, actually, on every single date you go on. And that's what it should be like, not an interview or something like that, but you should be quietly observing everything she does. And you need to recognize that there's 7 billion people out there, and a lot of those are single women that would be happy to be out with you, okay? And so you don't need to have this one-nightish enamored thing early on in a relationship. I mean, even if you're early in a commitment, doesn't mean you cheat or put your eyes elsewhere, but it does mean that you should be vetting this person out in that beginning before you do things like moving in together, making hard commitments, investing emotional and financial and logistical resources into somebody. You should know that they're the right person for that, and you should be setting a standard for yourself. And most of these guys out there, most of you guys out there who are going to listen to this, don't set good high enough standards for yourself. She's pretty, and so you're like, ooh, she's on a date with me. It's like you got past that first phase of rejection where she says yes to a date, and you're so super excited that you forget that she might be a shitty person, okay? You actually don't know. And so you need to insulate and protect yourself a lot more than you are, especially in the beginning. Because once you get into that investment, it's hard to now back out of it. The further along you are, the worse it gets if it's the wrong person. And so you need to be not interviewing, but having deep discussions, talking about stuff, and creating an open environment where there's no judgment, whatsoever, but where you're just having conversation. And notice how she is. Does she take personal accountability for things, for example? When she talks about her past, how did she treat people in her past? How does she treat people outside of relationships? What's her relationship with her parents? I mean, these are things that you should be observing. How she treats you, the little things. You know what I mean? Where is her interest? Is she paying attention to you when you talk? Is she asking show a genuine interest in who you are? A lot of different things. We can talk about that more in detail because I don't want this video to drag on any longer. But you should be asking open questions, and you should be listening. You should be listening more than you talk. Okay? Because as a man, you need to vet this person and make sure they're worth all your time, resources, and energy. And so you need to do that. And by listening to her, you're genuinely learning about her because you want to. And guess what? That's also an attractive quality. So these things work themselves out to the benefit of both the male and the female. But guys don't go into these things thinking about vetting. They go into it with a scarcity mindset. Like, oh, she's so pretty, I hope I get her. I hope we get her in the sack. I hope I get her to the next step. I hope we get her to the commitment. Stop it, all right? You need to just go out, have a good time, and open your ears and your mind and listen and observe everything that she's doing. And decide early on whether this is a person that you want to continue with and not just a pretty face, you know what I'm saying? And so that's it. So those are two things you're going to do. You're going to take your mask off and be unapologetically you. Second thing is you're going to listen and pay attention to everything she does. So you're actually in a vetting process in the beginning to make sure that she's somebody you want to invest in, you know. And then you want to create, so there's a third thing, you want to create an open environment where she can talk and she trusts you and she can share stuff. You're not going to judge her, but you're going to learn about who she really is. And it's better to find out who she really is within the first, 2 months than to find out who she really is years into a relationship and find out that it's not who you want to be with and then it's a problem. You see what I'm saying? And vice versa. You don't want to present a you that's different and then have her be disappointed or just find out you're not compatible later. That's a problem. So be unapologetically you, ask questions and vet this other person out. Create an open environment where you both can learn about each other early on. So that's how you get through this honeymoon phase without any problems when you transition into this other phase. But actually, I recommend a different model where the honeymoon phase continues throughout the relationship, and we'll talk about that in another podcast. So hopefully that all makes sense and is of value to you. Hopefully it'll help you if you're single and in the dating world, and be that, get to that top 5% of people who find that perfect person that they want to be with and, can stay with that person forever. Or rather, even if that's not your goal, just achieving your goal. You know what I mean? Some people don't want that, and that's okay too. But whatever it is that you want out of your life and your relationships, you want the best of that. And so hopefully this video is just one little gold nugget to help you get there. All right, talk to you later.